pop this piece of crap in, and what do you get?
There is an enormous problem right now
with people and corporations in the music industry that are unlawfully and religiously claiming works that were made fully legally by YouTube channels.
Where I got a mail from YouTube saying that someone named Ramjets claimed my video, which means that the video is still running, but the revenue from advertising now goes into his pocket instead of my pocket.
They have copyright claimed just over 400 of my total catalogue of videos.
This is two separate claims coming from two different companies. This is clearly an attempt to censor the video from multiple angles. It's premeditated, and it's really nothing but pure censorship.
Oh, shit. Here we go again. Good Lord, what is happening in there?
I mean, I know you're a sophisticated guy. The world is a mess. The world is as angry as it gets. Well, you think this is going to cause a little more anger? The world is an angry place.
If you're searching for evidence that we live in a clown-based society, look no further than YouTube's copyright system. Last year I posted an episode of YouTube Geographic where I talked about the origin and development of YouTube's Content ID system. I ended the episode with the implication that the copyright system improved over time. But is that actually true or just wishful thinking? Well, if you compare now with 2008, the system certainly seems better, as nowadays you're far less likely to get your channel striked and terminated as part of a copyright claim. But I'm not sure whether to attribute this to the system improving or copyright claimants getting smarter. You see, in the beginning when YouTube was just a sketchy Wild West site, media companies wanted nothing to do with it. Many companies like Viacom threatened YouTube with lawsuit after lawsuit for copyright infringement. When YouTube finally appeased the media companies with Content ID, their only means of controlling the content was a scorched earth policy. 2008 to 2009 was probably the worst ever time to upload copyrighted content to YouTube. Any channel at this time uploading montages, remixes, or YouTube poops faced serious risk of losing everything one day out of the blue. Minor use of copyrighted music frequently resulted in entire videos getting muted, or worse, replaced with a dreaded YouTube audio swap song. Stop! Sometime later, copyright punishments got a little less severe. Around 2010, media companies began blocking content rather than removing it. Still a major obstacle for YouTubers, but at least it was preferable to the nuclear option. Also around this time, Google introduced their AdSense program to YouTube videos, meaning it was now possible to earn money from content on YouTube, and thus, a new form of copyright claim became available to rights holders: revenue collection. Eventually, media companies began to realize that monetizing claimed content was a much better option than just removing it, since they could basically generate free revenue from virtually no effort on their part. At first, this was a very welcome change, at least in my experience. I wasn't making money from my YouTube poops anyway, I just wanted them to be seen. So when copyright claimants stopped blocking my videos and simply ran ads on them, it was no skin off my back. Monetization used to be a rare privilege on YouTube reserved only for the top creators on the site. Over time, however, the advent of MCNs made monetization much more accessible, so our standards and expectations of earning YouTube revenue changed. Unfortunately, the Content ID system didn't change alongside our expectations. All of a sudden, monetization became an entitlement rather than a dream, and the once benign revenue collection from media companies became a much more pervasive issue. The Content ID system only really improved in its ability to detect content, and not in its ability to differentiate remixes and reviews from shameless re-uploads. At some points, the media conglomerates were the least of our concern. People like Derek Savage and Matt Haas began abusing the system to silence criticism. Fair use was totally thrown by the wayside. Content creators suffered while abusive claimants faced no consequences whatsoever. Even now, 10 whole years after the introduction of Content ID, YouTube's copyright system is still very flawed, with many blatant issues remaining unresolved and unaddressed. But with that being said, this is the system in place, and YouTubers have had to accept that this is our reality. If you want to succeed on YouTube, you must go through the Content ID system. And as the system has become more advanced, so too have the strategies YouTubers use to outsmart it. Strategies that essentially answer the question, how much copyrighted stuff can I use and still get paid? Using copyrighted content is inherently risky. The more you use, the more likely you are to lose out on revenue for a video. However, the more you avoid copyrighted material, the more you risk your content becoming bland, repetitive, and unengaging for new viewers. It's a delicate balance, and to this day no one knows for sure the best way to approach this conundrum. A conundrum I like to call the YouTube copyright metagame. The metagame can essentially be represented by a spectrum of risk. Specifically, the risk of tripping the Content ID system through the use of copyrighted content in your video. How close can you get to the fire without getting burned? Starting at the very left of the spectrum, you will find the least risky option possible, Mr. Clean.
And now he's here to us.
The type of content where you don't use any copyrighted material because you don't need it. This style used to be much more common in the early days of YouTube, where people would just flip on a webcam and upload a raw video of themselves talking. Theoretically, this stuff should be safe from even the most slimy copyright abuse. It's strictly original by design, and using external copyrighted sources is completely unnecessary to the purpose of the content, making it the least risky type of video on the site. But with that being said, there's a reason why you don't really see this type of video much anymore. Nowadays, audiences expect a little more than a raw video of you making a sandwich, so unless you're very talented in a very specific niche or have very high production value, people aren't really going to be rushing to watch you. Unlike the old days, most modern genres on YouTube do benefit from using multimedia assets like external music, images, and footage. So much so that it's almost a requirement for growing your channel. But despite this, there are some creators who choose not to do it regardless.
Why? Let's see. Could it be because you love to upload copyrighted cartoons?
I just wanna be pure.
The Cold Turkey is very similar to Mr. Clean, the only difference being that cold turkeys abstain from using copyrighted material even though their videos could conceivably benefit from it. A big example that comes to mind here is Kurzgesagt, a science channel that painstakingly ensures that all of their assets are original content, and although they have successfully eliminated the risk of a copyright dispute, the costs are enormous, requiring a team of people spending hundreds of hours per video drawing and animating visual components in addition to composing original music. Clearly, this tremendous amount of effort is not exactly feasible for smaller channels who can't spare the expense.
A lot of you have been commenting, asking me why I'm no longer playing clips of songs in my videos. How come I'm not playing the clips? Why aren't I playing the clips? And basically, my answer to that question is copyright.
Anthony Fantano is another YouTube creator who seems to avoid using copyrighted material at all costs.
Why I chose not to use copyrighted material in my reviews despite it being a very common practice among YouTube reviewers. It's just really a time-consuming process and something that just ends up being like a real nail-biter at the end of the day because I'm worried about whether or not this video is am I going to get revenue off of that? Am I going to get revenue off of this? Is this going to affect whether or not the next video is monetized or this, that, and the other thing? It's just kind of a headache I would rather not focus on because I have to put out so much content all the time, and I feel like just spending all of that time, all of that effort on just refuting claims and fighting with this label and fighting with that label and responding to this and responding to that, it's just a waste of my time.
Media criticism is a genre that can benefit greatly from using copyrighted works to provide the viewer with direct examples of the elements being reviewed. However, on Fantano's music review channel The Needle Drop, he abstains from using any song samples within his reviews. This creates the rather unfortunate consequence of his reviews lacking context for audience members unfamiliar with the specific work. This appears to have the effect of making his viewership dependent on the popularity of the song or album, rather than intrinsic to the channel itself. Fantano has only been able to overcome this because of his unrivaled consistency and longevity in the medium. As one of the first regular music reviewers on YouTube, he quickly established himself as the premier music critic on not just YouTube, but the internet in general.
If I was completely free and allowed to and able to use as many song clips in every review as I would like, I would probably make it a more regular thing in most of my reviews. But because of that possibility, that incredibly likely possibility, really a probability, a lot of the time that I am going to have to be responding to a bunch of prompts about claims and this and that and the other thing in my videos just for referencing something or bringing up a clip or something like that, it's just something I would rather avoid.
Most YouTubers, however, don't have the benefit of pioneering a genre. It's difficult to imagine another critic becoming popular doing what Fantano does. YouTubers must innovate their approaches if they want to avoid getting labeled as a derivative clone. And frequently, this innovation requires the use of copyrighted material, which is where we find the copyright strategists I call the fair users. This is where you'll find a majority of your film, TV, and video game reviewers, in addition to a lot of drama, news, and commentary channels. This type of media is dependent on discussing and critiquing someone else's content, whether it's owned by a movie studio or some other YouTuber. This content falls under the legal defense of fair use, which theoretically protects it from claims of copyright infringement. However, as we've discussed earlier, rights holders on YouTube don't really care about fair use. The Content ID system cannot determine the context of the copyrighted material. It can only detect whether it's used at all. So technically, according to YouTube's automated systems, there's very little separating a movie review from a direct upload of that same movie. Which brings me to the bootleggers. At the very far right of the spectrum, you'll find the closest thing to an organized crime syndicate on YouTube. The very people that Content ID is trying to stop. People who literally upload unedited clips of movies and TV shows. These guys have been around since the very beginning of the website. YouTube itself was supposedly created because its founder, Jawed Karim, wanted to see a live TV clip that he couldn't find anywhere else. The origins of YouTube are rooted in the bootlegger, the faceless, silent mavericks of YouTube who make sure that no epic movie one-liner goes unuploaded. It was this type of content which instigated the Viacom lawsuit in the first place, and directly led to the implementation of Content ID. Nowadays, almost every major TV network, movie studio, and record company has their own YouTube channels to dump clips. But back in the day, these bootleggers were all we had, and love 'em or hate 'em, they were instrumental in driving traffic to the site when it was just starting out. And they arguably still are today. So the next time you see a Family Guy Funny Moments compilation pop into your recommended, you can be thankful, because no traffic means no YouTube. And many of you watching now are only here because you were first introduced to this site by binging unlicensed TV clips. The bootleggers walked so YouTubers could run. You don't have to respect them, but you have to acknowledge the role they play on this site. But with that being said, they are uploading exclusively copyrighted content, and no, slapping on a euphoric After Effects intro doesn't change that. So I can't really feel bad for them when they get caught, considering the copyright system literally exists to stop them. So far we've covered the riskiest copyright strategy, and the safest. So what about everything in between? Well, that's the part of the spectrum I affectionately refer to as no man's land, and the place I like to call home. It just so happens that I and a lot of other YouTubers use copyrighted content just for the hell of it. I can't speak for everyone else, but I do it simply because it's a style I've adapted since my days in YouTube poop. Anyone familiar with the history of the genre is aware that we've been terrorized by copyright claims for ages, dating back to when the system was much less forgiving. So many channels were barbarically slaughtered for daring to upload videos of SpongeBob shooting Patrick. In modern times, meme channels have to deal with a lot of the same pitfalls. We are a noble and proud people, simply making humorous edits for the enjoyment of others. Even though the fruits of our labor get shamelessly reposted elsewhere, we never remix our sources with the same intent. In terms of our approach to copyright, you can call us the Transformers, because our work is transformative and supposedly under the protection of fair use. When a copyrighted work is remixed, altered, or edited, it has theoretically been transformed beyond the confines of its original purpose, and should therefore be treated as an entirely new entity. To put it simply, people who want to watch The Incredibles aren't going to tune into my 8-minute nonsensical remix of The Incredibles. They're gonna pay for the full-length movie or pirate it. My remix is not attempting to siphon revenue off the original work. My viewers are not trying to skirt around paying for a movie ticket. They're watching to see my artistic interpretation of the source material. It's the same reason why Andy Warhol's paintings can't be classified as an advertisement for Campbell's Soup. He transformed the original work into something completely distinct. However, in the eyes of the copyright holder on YouTube, it doesn't make much of a difference. If you use any significant amount of copyrighted footage regardless of the context, you are likely to get claimed. And this is largely due to how the Content ID system is administered.
You've reached the Navy's automated phone service.
Earlier this year, YouTube released an alternate version of their Content ID tool for creators in the YouTube Studio beta. While it does not grant creators the same revenue-sharing privileges as media companies, it does provide us with insight on what these companies see while claiming our content. Basically, within the Copyright tab, you'll see a list of other people's videos that the system detected to match content in your videos. Presumably, media companies have the additional option to claim revenue from each video on the list, regardless of the context, amount used, or whether the claimant even watched the video. This highly streamlined system is great for rights holders and terrible for pretty much everyone else. Essentially, there's nothing stopping media companies from just spamming revenue claims on every video that winds up on the content claims list. Theoretically, YouTubers are supposed to have a means of countering bogus claims in accordance with the DMCA, but in practice, that simply isn't the case. On YouTube, the claimant presides as the judge, jury, and executioner in copyright disputes. Appeals and counterclaims mean nothing when their outcome is determined by the same people who issued the claim in the first place. Once the copyright holder inevitably rejects all of your appeals, your only option to reverse the claim is to literally take the claimant to court. Nearly all YouTubers are just small, private citizens who can't afford to fight multi-million-dollar corporations in a lengthy court battle. In a legal war of attrition, the corporation will always win. And when you factor in how the cost of even entering a lawsuit will greatly exceed any revenue you would gain from the video, this makes legal action a non-existent option in practice. In the world of YouTube copyright, the claimant holds all of the leverage. The way YouTube sees it, they earn the same cut of revenue no matter who claims the video, so they don't exactly have much of an incentive to change this. Imagine if your ex-wife was in charge of determining your alimony payment. Doesn't really seem fair, does it? Well, that's the system we have on YouTube, and I've personally had to deal with it time and time again. Episode 2 of Never Ever had its revenue claimed by WWE for using less than a minute of content. I was discouraged, but I was actually willing to settle for this because I was done worrying about it and I just wanted the video to go online for people to see. Then, a few hours after making it public, WWE blocked the video worldwide. So in review, I uploaded a video basically giving WWE free praise, free promotion, and free revenue, and they took a look at that and said, "Duh, no, we don't want any of that. We're going to instead choose to be as belligerent as possible to assert our copyright dominance." My appeal was predictably rejected, leaving me with no choice but to recut the parts and re-upload the entire video. And hey, this time the Content ID system didn't detect anything, and I got to keep all the revenue for myself. So in conclusion, WWE can suck a fart out of my ass. Your programming is hot garbage, and I can't wait to start watching AEW this fall, Wednesdays on TNT. And let this serve as a permanent reminder to all of you that media companies don't care one bit about the context of your video. They will shut you down without warning, for no reason, even if your video benefits them in every conceivable way. So if you think that these media companies are willing to spare a single minute of time to give your video a fair review, then you are sorely mistaken on how little these companies care. If you want your videos to get through the copyright system unscathed, you can't rely on media companies to be nice. Oftentimes, the people in charge of manually reviewing the claims seem more robotic than the automated system itself. So with that being said, the discretion of the copyright system depends almost entirely on whether or not you can sneak past the bot undetected. And in order to do that, we're going to have to investigate the dark arts of copyright smuggling. Coming up in part 2 of YouTube Copyright School, we take a look at the techniques YouTubers use to avoid getting claimed.
She's at the fence!
People of society, it is I, Joker Emp, here to tell you that enough is enough. I have had it with getting copyright claimed, getting demonetized, getting pushed around by this cruel, unfeeling world. Society has stolen my precious ad revenue for long enough, and I figure it's about time I return the favor. Now don't you bother touching that dial, because I'm currently broadcasting live around the world. That's right, ladies and gentlemen. I've successfully hacked into all of your machines using the power of the downward spiral. And now, you're all about to witness what happens when YouTubers rise up. If you're seeing this message, then your personal information has already been harvested and sold to the Chinese. And I got away with it too, all because you people connected to public Wi-Fi without a VPN. All those times I tried to sell you NordVPN, you scoffed and clicked away. Well, guess what, you fools? You should have used my affiliate link to purchase NordVPN for 70% off the 3-year plan, because now you're all gonna pay. Bah! Who's demonetized now?
You could leave in me coughing though if you want. That's your choice, I suppose.